and everything. Okay, meeting is now streaming on Facebook. Hey guys!
Hi. How are
Hello,
you?
hello.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. We are joined once again with the legendary Dr. Roman. Today we are discussing vaccines for kitties. And I haven't got a notification. Did you get a notification?
Yep, I think we are live. Yes, we are live. Dr. Roman, thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday again with us. We were just chatting as we were trying to figure out the live. We had a little glitch, which is why we're a little bit late. But we were just chatting about the incredible response that we got last time you so graciously joined us for an interview, and all the new information out there and just the impact that it's making on all these precious little lives. I just think it's
absolutely amazing. And I don't know if you got word of it, but there was specifically one kitty, his name was, or her, I don't know, Camus, that had kidney disease. And after watching this live, and I mean talking listless, like on death's door, and after watching your live, she got to, the owner got together with her veterinarian, worked through some ozone therapy, did some, I think they're doing fecal transplants now. And this cat, and she's got a video of it. This cat is like a whole new cat, grooming, happy, eating, back to life after.
That's wonderful. I mean, and for those of you out there that have not utilized ozone therapy, it is such a gift that is available that people just veterinarians don't use, and they don't know about it. But now it's getting to get attention. And even with coronavirus, because I've treated a cat with coronavirus, and only one that survived. But to know what the Spanish and the Italians are doing to treat the physicians that are treating coronavirus and COVID in Italy and Spain, it's amazing. It is so amazing. Their research has come out. If you know any physicians that want to bring themselves up to where we are in the care of people with ozone, please have them Google it, and they can. The International Scientific Committee on Ozone Therapy has done over 600 patients with like almost 100% success turnaround, like in 24 hours.
Wow.
I think that's something that's just so exciting. I'm so excited for today too.
Yeah.
Say again.
It sounds too sensational, but it's such a wonderful thing. Like for kidney disease in cats, it's bringing down inflammation. It's bringing down the infection. It's stimulating their red cells to get more oxygen. And what do you want to do? You want to get more oxygen into a body, because that's what health is getting a good circulation, getting mitochondria to work. So when it comes to any of the treatments that we can do for animals to add that medical ozone on, seems like a no-brainer. It's like should be an adjunct to everything that people do, whether if they don't do alternative, but if they do, then it's a real boost. If they do conventional, it's a real boost for them too. So
that's what I love though, is that last interview with you was just seeing the ripple effect of new knowledge or things that we haven't thought about, or ways that we can help treat our kitties. And there's just what that does. It's just so extraordinary. I'm extra excited for today's talk too, because this is another topic that is there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of
misinformation out there.
So I'm
surrounding vaccines. So August is Immunization Awareness, National Immunization Awareness Month. So why we're bringing on veterinarians, and specifically Dr. Roman, is to discuss vaccines, what we should know about vaccinating our cats, and just from like expert knowledge of someone that's been in the field for many years, and making miracles happen. Yeah, with so much experience on what we should know as cat parents when it comes to vaccinating our kitties. And I've got some interesting questions on that I just like popped up in my head while I was showering today too. So we'll get into those in a bit. But for those we got a lot of people on. So for those that are just joining and may not know who you are, can you give just a short intro?
Sure. So my name is Margot Roman. I've been a veterinarian for 42 years. I graduated from Tuskegee in 1978. And then prior to that, did an externship at Animal Medical Center and at Harvard and Angel Memorial, and then did my internship at Angel Memorial. and then joined the faculty at Tufts Veterinary School for 8 years and taught anatomy to the students in the first, and then applied anatomy. And then I started my own practice in 1982, 83, right, about 82, 83. And I've been doing that. I did a mobile in the beginning and then built our clinic. And that's when, in 1988, built the veterinary hospital. So I've been doing clinical work for 42 years. So I'm very blessed that I've been able to stay in practice for that amount of time. But I feel like every time I learn something new, it just opens up a whole nother avenue of information. And I feel that that's where the fun of veterinary medicine stays fresh, is that if you have a veterinarian that is constantly learning and learning new things and questioning what they've learned, that's the way to keep the best medicine for your pets. Someone who does the same thing over and over again every single day and doesn't expand their mind, I think is missing opportunity to save a lot more animals' lives. And so I was very fortunate in 1993 to start looking into homeopathy. And with the interest in homeopathy, the idea about how much vaccines we should do should be forefront, because we were at that time giving vaccines, but they were a lot less than we do now. And do we need to give as many vaccines? And the same thing with humans. Do we need to be giving these children 15, 20, 40 vaccinations when we used to give people 2 or 3 vaccinations? And it becomes sort of you start looking at what are they trying to prevent and what are they causing with these vaccines and the autoimmune diseases that we're causing by doing so much pharmaceuticals to animals. So we want animals to be healthy. Everybody wants their cat to live to 24. Or live to 21. And sadly, we get cats that get lymphoma, intestinal lymphoma at 6 and 7, and they get other kinds of cancer, but the lymphoma is the most trying one. And then they get kidney disease fairly early in their lives. So, what are these things about? I haven't seen a case of feline distemper probably in 30 years. So what are we chasing? What's killing animals is cancer and kidney disease in cats, and sometimes cardiac, but it's mostly cancer and kidney disease. And so we're not chasing distemper. We're not chasing rabies. We're not chasing, FIP. We're not chasing some of these other things that everybody thinks we need to vaccinate for, although they don't have an FIP vaccine. But, we're not chasing those diseases. And so why do we have to keep giving those vaccines? And some of them are legal because of the rabies laws. In most states now, we have to give rabies to cats. But if the cat has developed antibodies for that vaccine, that should be our criteria for a booster. So if you have to give a vaccine every year to an animal because it's by law and that animal already has antibodies, what are you doing to that immune system? And that's the question mark I've had for a long time. And because when I was in veterinary school and I started in 1974, they had an assembly and they brought us all together as vet students, and we started to go through the rabies vaccinations for the students. And we had assembly, and in the assembly it said, don't get yourself titered, your blood test done to see if you've developed antibodies. And when your antibody level drops, only that time get a booster. Under no circumstances just blindly get a booster. Now, this is 42 years ago, right? So I listened to that and I obeyed that. And I had my titer done every other year. And I still have antibodies from 42 years ago.
Right.
So if I had just blindly given myself a vaccine every 2 years, whatever anyone makes up a criteria that you have to do, are you going to cause autoimmune disease to yourself? I believe that could very well be part of the reason we have so much autoimmune, which is, to me, cancer is an autoimmune disease. It's your body doesn't recognize some abnormal cells that are growing and they start to take over. So do we need to be giving these vaccines as directed by the pharmaceutical company? But as directed by the pharmaceutical company, it says must be given to a healthy pet or healthy dog or cat. And if your cat has kidney disease, why would you vaccinate it? Okay. You've got a sick cat. If your cat is hyperthyroid, why would you do that? If your cat is hypothyroid, why would you do that? So there's all these criteria of what is considered a healthy animal. And if we could honor those titers as and we should all be learning that now. What are they talking about with a vaccine? They want to establish titers, antibodies. So if somebody, and now people are knowing what that is because they see it on TV that this vaccine established antibodies, but they lingered off in 3 months. That's not the success of a vaccine, that you have 3 months immunity. That's not a good idea. If you get the disease and some of the people that are getting the disease don't have immunity either. So what is that about? So where is your immune system gone that it can't take care of itself and that it can't, learn how to activate its T cells and its B cells and know how to protect itself from another infection? So that's where, if we have antibodies and we know this cat specifically has antibodies, why would we give it another vaccine? I don't have any idea why we would give it another vaccine, because the vaccines, many of them have adjuvants. PureVac doesn't, but it still has chemicals in there. It still has stuff in there that you don't want to give to a cat that already has established antibodies. So you've got aluminum in some of them. You've got different types of stabilizers and colors and dyes and cell cultures that may not need to be added into that animal's body. And you're talking about a cat that could weigh 3 pounds, or a bigger one could weigh 18 pounds. But that same vaccine is given to a 180-pound, Newfoundland, same exact vaccine.
Yeah.
So there's question marks all the way through the science of this technology that needs to be questioned. And the question to your veterinarian says, well, this is the way we do it. They're perfectly safe. I don't feel that way. I don't feel they're perfectly safe. I've had several animals come into my practice, and many people have known about the fibrosarcomas that occur at the site of the vaccine. We don't know why some cats get it, some cats don't, but they often can kill the cat. And it's a cancer that's formed from a reaction from that vaccine, usually the rabies vaccine. So, the science says, well, give the vaccine as far away from the body so you could amputate that part of the body. That seems like a ridiculous thing. If the animal has antibodies, there is no reason to revaccinate that cat. Now, a vaccine only has to be, a rabies vaccine only has to be 86% effective to get licensure. Okay.
To get what?
86% effective to get a license as a rabies vaccine.
So you're saying that there's 14% that may not be.
That may not work. So they're talking about this COVID shot only has to be 50% effective.
Oh my God.
To get a license by the FDA.
Why? And why?
That's what you're saying. That's the current, go watch the news. That's the current thing. Only has to be 50% effective. The flu shot only has to be 40% effective. And most of the time, the flu vaccine, I've heard it's like 12% some years, because they're never getting different strains. So, if you have a 50-50 chance of getting COVID from this vaccine, if you get it, what else will it do to your immune system if your immune system is weak and you deliver it in a way that it somehow attacks your immune system in some way. So these are questions that we're all listening to the news and analyzing it. But if we go back to cats, if an animal has established an antibody for rabies and has a good antibody level, why would I give it another vaccine? There's no reason why, except that it is cheap and it's fast and you make money just doing it. And because to do a titer and to send a titer out and do the antibody titer and get the blood results and send it to the lab and then get the report and put it in the record and call the client and all those steps it's much faster. Just, you're done. Here's your certificate, right? So, but as a pet owner or as a caretaker, I feel like getting a rabies titer is something you should do. And if your animal has had a reaction to the vaccine, don't give them a vaccine unless they, if your cat goes outside and is getting into, bringing home bats and things, the cat could cause rabies to a human family. I mean, they can bring rabies. So knowing, if you have a cat that got rabies vaccine and goes outside, it may be in that 14% that's not protected from rabies.
Anyway,
right. So if you know specifically that your cat has antibodies, then I would feel much safer about that than just assuming it's okay, because it could fall into that 14%.
And isn't it, that's so interesting, the titer portion of it, the antibody portion of it, especially, and this blew my mind when I learned years ago that veterinarians are titer tested. They're not, they get the rabies vaccine and then they are not revaccinated. They are titer tested instead, yet it's not the going thing for their clients. And it's like, where does the veterinarian themselves not like kind of say, well, I'm titer tested, and so maybe I should do that for my pets as well. Like for example, our Pooh Bear, who's right here, he when we first got him years ago, he got into a fight. He had of course, it was a Sunday. We had to go to an emergency vet. He had a big gash on him. And because we didn't have paperwork that he had been, he was 2 years old at the time, and we didn't have paperwork that he had been vaccinated. They, even though we knew that he had, because he was my sister's before he was ours, they vaccinated him again before they could treat him. And now he lives with an autoimmune disease that's very difficult to, but we know 100% that that's where it came from, but no vet will tell you that that's where it came from, or most vets won't tell you that that's where it came from, right? That specific vet will definitely not tell us that that's where it came from. But we know now, after learning so much, that, that there are huge side effects to over vaccinating. And we're not anti-vaxxers, but we are,
I want to establish antibodies. So if you can establish an antibody and you've established that, then I feel like as a vet, I've done my job. My job is to protect that animal from that disease. And in rabies, it's to protect that you as the owner and anyone else who's associated with that cat. So if I have given a rabies vaccine and I know I gave the rabies vaccine in the correct amount and I know that I gave it, and then we do a titer on it a year later and the titer is off the roof, why would I give another booster?
Right.
So in Massachusetts, we have to establish a 3-year rabies. So we give them one, 9 to 12 months later, we give them a second one, and then they're good for 3 years. And then every 3 years, we can give them a booster. If they get outside and they get a wound of unknown origin and come home, then they need to get a booster at that time, right? So the laws are specific, and we all, as veterinarians, have to follow state law. But I've always challenged, if an animal has cancer, I cannot give it off label. I'm not going to give the vaccine off label to an unhealthy animal. So we're going to give a titer, and then we give a medical letter to the client. It's not a legal letter. It's a medical letter telling whoever is if some animals have to be licensed like dogs are with cats, and that this cat has X disease or X issue, or is diabetic, or is hyperthyroid, or whatever. And we feel that the vaccine is harmful to that cat's immune system. So if the cat doesn't have antibodies, that's the hard one, because then, we don't have protection from the cat. And in that case, I hope I keep knocking on wood, I don't get many of them, because most cats do have antibodies. I mean, I remember I had a 15, or maybe it was more than that, 16 or 17-year-old cat that, the town needed to get the cat rabies vaccinated. And at that time, the rabies titer, the highest it could go was 15. This cat had a titer of 15. And it had all these other medical conditions. And I said, I'm not going to give this cat a vaccine. It's got the highest level it could be exported to New Zealand and Australia with the highest level of antibodies. And I'm not vaccinating this cat. And it's hard because the towns don't get it. The health boards don't get it. The medical veterinary board doesn't get it. The, public health, the veterinarians don't get it. They just think it's just a rabies shot. Just give them a shot. Just give it to them. What do you hurt? It's just a vaccine. Well, you know what? My own dog had an autoimmune reaction to her vaccine and died. So I have learned my own personal lesson from the rabies vaccine. So it's important. It's really important to protect the public. That is the zoonotic, prevention, that we do as veterinarians. But we have to use our scientific skills and knowledge for the protection. So if I use my scientific skills and knowledge and I evaluate that animal's immune system and find out it still has antibodies and it's got cancer, I'm doing my scientific knowledge and skills in protecting the public. So I'm doing my veterinary oath and I am practicing good medicine. So that's what you want to find, is someone who says, yes, your cat is not is a health risk, and I don't think the vaccine is a benign thing. So you just have to get empowered to speak up to your veterinarian. I'll say, well, that's the law. We have to follow the law. Well, are you supposed to give something off label? meaning can you see the label? It says must be given to a healthy cat. My cat's hypothyroid. My cat has diabetes. My cat has kidney disease. My cat has heart disease. Do you think my cat is a healthy cat?
Right. Well, and here's another thing that we talked about with Dr. Kosher a couple weeks ago that I find very interesting. This happened with my sister's cat too. But a lot of veterinarians will not see. So your cat is sick, or they have something wrong with them, or you just really need to get them a checkup. A lot of veterinarians now are saying we're not allowed to see the cat until we vaccinate them.
Exactly.
And so what if you don't know if they're sick or not? You don't know that yet.
Yeah. So, it's hard because they won't, in order for us to see an animal, it has to have a current rabies vaccine in my state.
Oh, wow.
But if it's sick, I can't, if I give it a rabies shot, I'm causing harm. I'm causing damage. So if I can pull a titer on that cat, I mean, if it's really sick and it's really anemic, a titer is not a good thing to do because it's a lot of blood. It's 2 cc's of blood we have to send out to Kansas State to evaluate it.
Wow.
So it's not something that, I like to do on a very sick animal. I would want to get these animals and know their situation before that life-death thing happens, because it puts everybody in the clinic at risk. If the cat has never had a vaccine and it bites somebody and it dies, we have to figure out if it has rabies, if it's paralyzed and it could have got hit by a car, but nobody knows if it got hit by a car. And, but if it's a stray, you never know what it is, at that point. And it could have been paralyzed from rabies and was dragging itself across the road and is next to the road. So those are all the things that, you don't want any human to have to go through rabies treatment when you have an actual animal that you don't know the background. If you know the titer of the animal and you know that the titer was good a year ago or a year and a half ago, the likelihood of that titer just dropping off of the dog getting rabies or the cat getting rabies is like, not gonna, it's like, it would be so unusual. But if people don't know their antibodies of their dog, their cat or their dog for any of the diseases that we can. So with cats, we titer for panleukopenia, and most of the cats that I've given a panleuc shot as an older kitten have never needed another vaccine.
Wow.
I love it.
So let's talk about that. How many, what kind
two
of
things real quick, because I want to let everyone on our Facebook know. So we're doing this on Zoom, live on Facebook. I see a bunch of questions coming in already, but we're not able to catch everything right now. But I did want to ask, we're seeing a lot of people asking about that number that you just gave for the titer at 15.
Well, that's old. That's the old system. Now it's different. So that was.
Is there a good level that we can say, when we go in and, I think feeling empowered when we ask our veterinarians who may not be used to being asked about titer tests, to know what is a good titer test.
So anything, supposedly anything over 0.5 is considered a vaccinal reaction. If they have lower than that, I want to get them to 0.5 if they have, but according to Ron Schultz, if it's anything over 0, so if it's 0.1, they still have memory. They still have cellular memory. And it should be able to respond. But I want it higher than that so that I know, they've nailed it. They're going to nail it, So if I get the, if it's 4, or it's 5, or it's, whatever, it's much higher than that, then I'm thrilled. I can just sort of, I did my job. I've gotten that antibody level, up there.
Now, is that the same is that generally speaking? Because we've had people come to us and they say, I got a titer test instead of a vaccine, and my vet said that there's not enough titer, meaning that the levels, it sounds like depending on the veterinarian.
It's waning, right? It's waning. So those are hard questions, and again, sometimes I can't answer them to my client either. If that cat is going outside, if that cat is at risk, if that cat, has lives in the woods and is bringing home vermin all the time, then, I feel like we have to do something. If the cat has severe autoimmune disease, it's a hard one for me to do. I mean, sometimes we do. Like I had a case, it was a dog, and I'm not going to be specific, but the dog had antibody titers, and the owner, we had to vaccinate the dog because the owner wanted to get the dog vaccinated. And the dog had cancer on its back. And I told him, I said, you see that cancer on the back, it'll probably double or triple in size after that rabies, could very well do that. And it was like that. It was like a zucchini on the dog's back. It was the size of two raised silver dollars, and then it became like a zucchini, like about 2 or 3 months after the rabies vaccine. So the vaccine is stimulating the immune system, not in a good way. And so, we want to establish what we need. And that dog had plenty of antibodies, but we had to vaccinate it because it had bitten somebody. And this town said, you have to give this dog a vaccine. And it had cancer, and cancer got worse, and, it eventually passed away. But, I felt like it was what the owner's decision to do that. Yeah. But it's hard when you have, public health officials saying you have to give your cat a rabies vaccine.
Right.
Yeah. You can't keep the dog unless you give it a rabies vaccine, and the dog has lymphoma. I mean, why would I make this dog get a rabies vaccine when it's sick like that? Right. And you can usually, in our state, we can give medical exemptions. So,
right.
Yeah.
And
in many states, in many states, they can give medical exemptions as well. Now, here's a question for you. So let's put it in it, because this is going to answer a lot of people's questions here.
And we're going to get to
scenario.
Let's let everyone know too. We're going to try to get to a lot of these questions here in a little bit.
But this is going to answer probably a lot of them that I've seen. So in this scenario, somebody adopts, say from the rescue or wherever, a kitten, and the kitten is healthy. He or she brings the kitten to you as a veterinarian. What do you suggest as far as a vaccine protocol for that kitten?
So if the kitten came from a shelter, if the kitten came from a breeder, and the breeder has titered her cats, knows what her situation is with her vaccines, I would wait to the longest amount of time before I give that cat a booster or a vaccine. Okay. My standard is to get one FERCP vaccine into the cat after 12 weeks, if possible. So don't do a 6-week, 9-week, 12 weeks. So try to wait to 16 weeks to 20 weeks, keeping that cat a little isolated. I would test it for leukemia before it left the shelter to make sure it hasn't gotten it from its mother. And then I would test it at least a month later and maybe 2 months later for, feline leukemia, feline AIDS, to make sure that it has not carried that as a latent from the mother or the shelter exposure. So that's my typicals. And then the rabies, we want to do by the time they're 6 months of age. So the rabies, we do the one distemper shot at a later. So we don't do the series of 3 kitten shots. We do one instead of 6-week, 9-week, and 12 weeks, we wait to 16 weeks. If there is a respiratory illness that's going through the shelter, then you probably have to give them a vaccine. But I would give them ozone, because ozone gets rid of the upper respiratory infections. So, we can really try to help them and not, subject them to the conventional lots of antibiotics, because they're viral infections. So why are we throwing antibiotics at them? We want to throw things that are helping get the immune system stronger and are antiviral, which is ozone therapy. And it also is antimicrobial, so it prevents the secondary pneumonia. So that's where, shelters need to be getting ozone generators and working with a veterinarian to get them trained to treat their shelter cats with ozone.
Okay, but going on beside the FERCP and the rabies vaccine,
yes.
Do you suggest any other vaccines? Because we get a lot of people that say I have to. I
don't check for leukemia anymore.
Okay.
I think there's certain areas of the country that it might be more prevalent. We used to have a problem here, and we don't see that much leukemia anymore. And to have to give these vaccines every year for leukemia, I just think it's not healthy for the cat. So I do one FERCP, I give them a rabies, I repeat the rabies at 3 years. And then if the cat's going out, to do another rabies shot 3 years later. If it's not going out and they want to do a titer, it's still not legal. So if for them to have a legal piece of paper saying their cat is rabies vaccinated, then they have to get the vaccine. So if they get a titer every year because they want to be protected and know that their cat specifically has antibodies and is not one of the 14% that doesn't, then they get a titer done. And usually I do that every 18 months on a cat.
That's awesome.
Because they're not going outside. Most of my clients don't have outside cats. They mostly have cats that they've been able to, prevent from climbing trees and getting out.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're gonna see that.
I mean, well, that's the way it is in our home. And luckily we've partnered with a veterinarian that doesn't believe in routine vaccines for indoor cats. So, and we don't have the vaccine police that come to our door and knock and say, I need to see your cat's papers. And we don't take them to groomers or board them or anything like that. So our situation specifically is, we just don't vaccinate after the first vaccine. Now we have titered, and we do, I think that's what we recommend for anybody that's worried. In our case, there's no way. We're also weighing risk versus, when it comes to feline leukemia, our cats aren't going to be exposed to another cat with feline leukemia. When it comes to rabies, we don't have open windows where bats can fly in and they can.
I think it's important for people to make sure their cats do get rabies vaccines.
Yeah.
Because I've had 2 incidents, where clients said, my cats never go outside. I live on a 3rd floor apartment. They never go out, right? They never go out. And somebody broke into the fire escape, broke through the window, and all 3 cats ran out, and they were gone for like 2 weeks, and she couldn't.
Oh, wow.
And this was when I first started practicing, and they came back all beat up from whatever. Nope, they didn't. They were inside cats. They didn't know what to do outside, right?
Yeah.
So of course they hadn't had rabies vaccines, and at that time, Massachusetts did not have a rabies issue, so it was not a big issue. And then we did get a rabies issue, and I had a client who lived in a brand new apartment. She lived on the 2nd floor, and it was high ceilings and everything. And I had given the cat a rabies vaccine. The one insisted that the cat get a rabies vaccine. And because I said, you have to get it started. You just got to do one, just do one. And if she said, the cat's not going outside. We live in an apartment, remember? And lo and behold, like 2 days before that rabies vaccine expired, a bat got into their house and was flying around, and the cats were all chasing the bat in the house, and they killed the bat, and the bat had rabies. And everyone had been vaccinated 2 days. So we were like, we just gave everybody,
wow.
Right? And we were like, okay, but those things happen. And again, I don't want anybody to be in that situation where if your animal doesn't have a rabies vaccine and has never been vaccinated, it has to be put into strict quarantine. The laws just recently changed in Massachusetts, which was if the cat has had a rabies vaccine and has had one in the past, they used to say, and it was overdue, you had to put it in quarantine for 6 months, which makes no sense. It's like you're putting it and exposing it. You should give it a booster and put it in quarantine, which was what I recommended like 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And so that's how they do it here. So if the cat had a rabies vaccine sometime in their life and it gets exposed to a wild animal, you give them a booster and put them in quarantine. So if they do break, their immune system has been stimulated right then. So hopefully there's some antibodies that will then launch and respond and prevent the cat from getting rabies.
Wow.
So talk to us about,
you got me.
This is really good information. I think so many times it is the stuff that we are not expecting that turns into the scary emergency that is, it can be devastating. So talk to us a little bit about what, there's a lot of different vaccines out there. People are always, specifically for rabies. What vaccines do you recommend?
Well, I use the IMRAB 3, and I've never used the PureVac. And my feeling is if I'm going to give one vaccine, the IMRAB 3 is it's mercury free, and it's the one I've been using now for my entire career. And it was always more expensive. It was always, and I said, I've never, knock on wood, had any sarcoma, but I only do one vaccine at a time. And I give, in the last 27 years, been giving homeopathy with it. So I give one vaccine. I do give it intramuscular in the right rear leg, and I give a homeopathic with it. So I'm always, sort of only doing the minimum that I do, and I only give it to healthy animals. So
explain what you mean by giving a homeopathic.
There's several homeopathic remedies that we can use when we vaccinate. I use Listen, which is the homeopathic rabies vaccine nosode, and I use a rabies nosode, and I give that when I give the vaccine. People can also use Thuya, they can use Silica, or they can use Ledum, depending, but I have traditionally used Listen. If I give the FERCP, I give Thuya, and I usually give them in a 200C dosage. And I give it, I give the remedy, right before or right after the vaccine, usually right before, because sometimes after I've given the vaccine, the cat really doesn't want to talk to me. So not have to go after them again once we've given the shot. And then they say, well, you don't need to give the vaccine intramuscular. Well, I knock on wood, I've never had a sarcoma from doing it this way. So, should we use the PureVac? The PureVac's only good for 1 year. I don't want to give something that's only good for 1 year, right? I don't want to give it at all. So if I can give it and it lasts for 3 years and it's safe and I haven't had a problem with it, why would I give the 1 year and have to give it every year and keep giving a vaccine every year?
Well, so does the PureVac have 3 year now?
I think PureVac has a 3 year now.
Has 3 years. So it might be very similar to the IMRAB 3.
Yeah, IMRAB 3 is what Dr. Kosher said she uses too.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
So they have the 3 year PureVac. It may be very similar. I have to look into that because I have not looked at what is different between the thimerosal free IMRAB 3 and the PureVac 3. What's the difference between the two? I don't know.
Okay, well, I have two questions for you. I'm going to do one at a time,
Okay.
but very, very out there kind of. Have you ever heard of a cat or a dog developing the antibodies to any type of disease without any other way other than being vaccinated?
Well, I tried doing some experiments because I thought that we could establish antibodies through like a litter of puppies. This is what I was told, that sometimes when you get the vaccine, it is shed through your saliva and another animal will get it. Right. So if you have a litter of puppies and you don't vaccinate several, but you vaccinate some of them, and then you check and maybe the shedding from licking, but they have to be sharing the saliva at a specific time that this virus is being shed, and they have to be licking each other and grooming. So there's a lot of risk on whether it happens or not, right? Okay. And so to find that out, to look at that, I have not been successful in finding out if they've never had a rabies shot. I have not yet seen one that had a rabies antibody. And clients that said, I don't think my cat's ever had one. I don't want to give one. I said, well, if you don't know for sure, and they're like, we're not sure, but we're pretty sure it hasn't had one, and then it doesn't have any antibodies, then, it didn't have a vaccine, vaccines for distemper or rabies. So, but if they had, can they respond with one rabies vaccine and have antibodies for years? I don't know. Most of the time, what I've done is done a second one, waited the 3 years, and then gone from that point on, so that the clients, have been in the legal status, for Massachusetts.
Okay. Now, last time you were here, we discussed fecal transplants, right?
Okay.
We're talking shit.
It's her favorite.
It's my favorite. Would you think, or have you ever seen if say a cat gets a fecal transplant from another cat that has been vaccinated, do you think that would then give them the antibodies? And if so, or if not, why?
Brilliant question. I think that's a brilliant question. So this is exciting stuff to talk about, because for that same reason, this is just something for everybody to think about. Did I mention the parvo case that I had because this is a cat thing, so I probably didn't talk about like dog parvo case. So I want to go circumvent that, but this is something that I've been really thinking about and want to, have everybody else thinking about it and talking to people about it and stuff. So about 6 years ago, I had a client that broke with parvovirus, which is a very deadly virus in dogs. If any of you have dogs, parvo is really bad. And in the 1977, 78 is when it broke. And I happened to be on the front lines of that whole thing, that we lost hundreds of animals, but my clinic didn't, because I had the foresight to order the first vaccines in Massachusetts and vaccinated every one of our clients, and we didn't lose anybody, and nobody else had vaccines. So that was in 1979. And, so I'm into vaccines when I feel we need them. Right. But anyway, these dogs all had parvo vaccines, but they all broke with parvo. The entire kennel of 20 dogs broke with parvo. And there was a litter of puppies that were 5 weeks. It was a sled dog group. And the mother of those puppies was also really sick. And there was another puppy that was about 9 months old who had a parvo vaccine, but they must have broke with another aspect of it because they did a PCR and the cat, and they were all positive with the PCR. So they had this one puppy who was really, really sick, and they took it to the ER, and they spent $3,000, and they said, there's nothing we can do for this dog. It's dying. Just put it down. So she called me and said, can you see my dog? And I said, don't come into my building. We're going to glove up, isolate. You stay in your car. We'll open the hatch. We'll treat the puppy from the hatch of the car. And we did UVBI, ultraviolet blood therapy. We did a fecal transplant, ozone rectally, some sub-Q vaccines. We gave it to take home to give everyone a parvo nosode, which is a homeopathic. We gave everyone ozonated saline to go home. And we gave them fecal to give them oral fecal. Okay. So she takes this dog. When it came in, I couldn't tell it was alive. It had no anal tone and blood was pouring out of its anus.
Oh,
Color was completely white. All of its limbs were just, I kept looking and it said, it's still alive. And I could feel barely a heartbeat. Right. And so we did all the stuff to it that I did. And I said, do not let this puppy near anyone. She says, I have a back stairs on the 3rd floor. I'll take him up that way. I'll shower. I'll come down. I got to make dinner for my kids and the family. So she drove like an hour and a half back to where she lived and took a shower, did everything, had the puppy up there, came down, was making dinner, turned behind her, and the puppy standing there wanting to eat. Yeah, it was like a miracle, right? And all the dogs survived that got ozone in a fecal transplant and the homeopathic. Okay, all the 19 dogs at the home got. The only one that died was at the emergency room. Never was able to get that.
Oh wow!
I was at a microbiome conference in San Francisco in February last year, a year ago, and they had this. I told this case. It was a microbiome conference, and I told this case, and this one scientist stood up and she said, "That wasn't microbes that turned that animal around. That was bacteriophages." And what bacteriophages are things that are viral that attach to the body that gets you over a particular disease. So the Russians were using bacteriophages 40 years ago to treat viruses. So my question mark is, do we have bacteriophages for coronavirus, right? Is that the way we should be looking at and be treating and looking for bacteriophages that are there because the immune system knows how to do it? Now, on your question, are there types of bacteriophages that are there as part of the immune complex that's eliciting the immune response? Since 80% of our immune system comes from their gut, are there bacteriophages from the vaccines or from the immune system that are lingering in the intestinal tract that by giving the fecal transplant, we are giving that protection? So, does the bacteriophages that my dog might have that protected those dogs come from their one parvo vaccine that they had? But they only had one parvo vaccine. They didn't have, all these had series of parvo vaccines and still broke.
Wow.
Who knows what your immune system can do for you if it's like, what can your GI tract do for you? What can brown do for you? It's like, what can we do for, what is it doing for us? And the respect that we need to be looking at that when we look at the science of immunotherapy is looking at the gut microbiome.
Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting if like down the road, we're able to use a fecal transplant in lieu of a vaccine. So, because it's not going to have, all the chemicals and mercury and side effects, right?
Yeah. So, what else is in a fecal transplant? There's a lot of other stuff we don't know. That's the question. It's like, what else would you be giving me? Like what else, right? But if you're in a life and death situation, like you are with something like this, is that something that we could turn around? And I have had dogs and cats that have been in life death situations, and we've given them fecal transplant and it's turned them around.
Is that timeline? So the story of the parvo puppy is really just mind blowing. We're looking at, you did the treatments.
She drove. It was about 3 hours after I gave the treatment that the dog was downstairs.
Crazy.
Is that normal to see? And when we're talking about fecal transplants too, like the kitty that's
the viral thing, the ozone, with ozone can turn them around in hours. And that's why it's such an important component for, looking at the Spanish medical studies and the Italian medical studies and the Chinese medical studies and the Cuban and the, Brazilian. They're all coming out with research papers talking about ozone. Was it the ozone? Was it the UVBI? Or was it a combination of stimulating the immune system instead of just suppressing it with antibiotics and drugs?
Yeah.
So I was using oxygen to stimulate the immune system, to activate mitochondria. I mean, this puppy's mitochondria were blitzed. It just couldn't do anything, right? I mean, it was pretty much dead. I mean, the ER said it was dead. They said just it's dying, and I thought it was dead. But to have it turn around in 3 hours I was like shocked, right? I was shocked. So, but it made me think, like, what part of it was the shocking part? Was it the ozone? Was it the homeopathy? Was it the UVBI? Was it the fecal transplant? But when I gave this lecture in front of all these people, this particular researcher who had spent 40 years of her life in studying bacteriophages said it's absolutely the bacteriophages. So it's like, I had not really thought about bacteriophages at that point. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So maybe, there's ways of taking bacteriophages from COVID, convalescent COVID patients, and their immune system has learned how to navigate through that. That's why they're using the convalescent serum. But it's harder for people to give serum. You can't like treat a lot of people with your serum, but everybody's going to the bathroom all the time. So you could harvest that. And I'm sure they'd be happy to pass that on to you, right? To save a life, right? So I think that there's something that, again, I just want people to think about it and study it and say, yeah, can we get bacteriophages for certain viral diseases that we can utilize to help fight viral diseases? And I'd love somebody to study it for parvo as well. I mean, I just put it out there for the respiratory, and then the same thing for if we can find animals that have recovered from FIP and cats that have recovered from FIV and have had it, but have thrived, what is in their immune system that has navigated their immune system that has given them the opportunities to thrive. So one of the things that we did with my for several of our cancer cases is we used the microbiome of the great grandmother of my dogs who had mammary cancer, and she had it for 7.5 years, malignant mammary cancer. And so we took her mammary, her poop that I had frozen. At that time she was still alive, so that was like 6 years ago, and she was still alive. We took her poop and we mixed it with her great grandson's poop, and so this dog that got the fecal transplant after it got chemo lived 2 years beyond what was expected for T-cell lymphoma, because we took her. What I looked at is we took her immune system and we mixed it with her grandson's young vital energy, and we got this puppy this 11-year-old dog playing ball the next day after chemo instead of being moping around.
Wow.
That's crazy. Okay, we
have a question from Trisha. Well, we have a question from Trisha. She said, I'm not familiar with nosodes. What is the difference between nosodes and vaccines? This is a great question.
Okay. So nosodes they take the disease or they take the vaccine and they make a homeopathic remedy out of it. So giving the homeopathic remedy, which works on the vital force by giving a portion, the energetic portion of what you're talking about. So would I trust a nosode to establish an antibody? I've tried doing that, and I did not get antibodies to show that the animal had immunity. So if I'm trying to play within the conventional boundaries of finding out if they have antibodies, and again, they may establish antibodies, but the ones that I did not. And so what I'm trying to do is to be able to say to my clients in the conventional way that we are able to identify that your cat has antibodies. And by giving that vaccine, we can establish antibodies. But there are homeopathic vets that don't want to give any vaccines and want to just give nosodes. it's just hard to know. You can't put your finger in balance and say, we've got titers on that established antibody level from the nosode. So, does it work? Part of it is, I think that animals don't work as well as they did 100 years ago or 80 years ago. We have 90,000 chemicals in the environment that have damaged the microbiome and damaged the thyroids and damaged the adrenals and damaged these immune systems. And these animals are aging so fast, and the types of insults that have come into the body over the last 30 years is outrageous. The amount of chemicals, the amount of electromagnetic field, the amount of all the stuff that people put in their home with their Scotch guards and their Febreze and their all these other things that are going into the food, and the glyphosate and which is the Roundup, which is an herbicide that basically disrupts the gut flora completely. So these animals are bombarded with so much stuff that it's challenging to keep them healthy.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, and it's true. I think that's something too, just talking about the genetics. I know Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib were talking about, the part that genetics can play. And I think exactly what you're saying, over time, when you think about this exposure that's been happening, it does take a toll generation to generation on these little ones.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And, of course, cats, you can have generations and generations and generations and, 10 years,
Right.
you could have 10 generations in 10 years, which is, and if they're exposed and each generation has been on antibiotics and each generation has had lots of vaccines, how much DNA changes have occurred from that, and the toxins in the environment is scary.
Yeah. Okay. So Peter
the poop man.
Peter the poop man.
Okay.
He said, Dr. Roman, when you give a rabies vaccine to your personal dogs or cats, do you stop collecting their microbiome for a short time?
Yes. So we did that with the animals. When we did it, we kept them. I didn't collect them for about 6 weeks. So I left them, without the rabies vaccine, but without collecting them for 6 weeks. So just in case there was some other negative side effect. I do have some of it saved, and we probably have it in there saved, but I wasn't selling it. And my thought is, is there still a discharge of the vaccine in that it could be potentially used for an oral inoculation, but as an immune piece, to give them the vaccine. So I think we probably have some stored, because everything is dated and timed, and we know exactly when we got the vaccines. And I know we'll save some as post-rabies vaccine, that if I wanted to ever experiment with that, to give it to a dog and then titer it, give it to him, then titer it again and give it to him, we've got some frozen. But hopefully I don't have to vaccinate my dogs for years. Hope.
Yay.
Follow-up question. You were talking about the research studies that are going on in my sweet Pooh Bear is here, so it's very distracting.
He is.
So precious. Oh, is this it? Oh, the research that's going on in these different countries. Becky actually asks if Russia is claiming to have the first, is a little off topic, the first vaccine for COVID. Do you think that any of that is coming about because of some of these studies? Is it just a tried and true vaccine, or do you think?
I think it's a tried and true vaccine, but from what I can just see, but I was hoping that we could see some changes in, and I haven't been able to really find it. If anybody can find what the Russians are doing to treat COVID, I know what the Spanish and the Italians are doing. But I haven't seen anything about the Russians, because they were the ones that first started using ozonated saline before I did. And, when I started using ozonated saline in 2004, and it was not accepted in Italy and Spain. They said it was, no, you can't use it. Now it's considered the gold standard of using it for COVID, which is very exciting. That, back in 2004, they thought that was not the correct way to use ozone, but we see such amazing stuff with ozonated saline. So it's really,
would we be imposing too much if we were to ask if you might come back another time just to talk about ozone?
Yeah,
I feel like
I'd love to talk about ozone. I think it's if you Google it and you look for it with Corona, there's a lot of studies that are coming out, and any of you that are physicians or work with physicians that have balls, have, no, I can't say that, but have guts,
Chutzpah.
chutzpah, have
Jeez.
chutzpah, yes, have chutzpah to stand up to their medical professionals, because we're in a pandemic and we have no tools that are helping save lives. They put everybody on ventilators and it didn't work. And so if you have something that can oxygenate the blood, increase microcirculation, prevent coagulation, stimulate the immune system, stop the cytokine storm, all the research on ozone has shown that. And so that's why having something that, get physicians to talk among themselves, get hospitals to say, if you listen to Redfield from the CDC, he's saying, in the fall, it's going to be worse than it is now. And they've been treating H1N1 and influenza with ozone for 25 years. So if we have a tool that's worked in Italy and Spain and has worked for influenza, why aren't we trying to bring this into hospital settings, having physicians and there are a lot of physicians that do this, but they're all keeping quiet because they don't want to be attacked.
Right, big pharma.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think
big pharma, if you're out there, please start to use ozone in big pharma. I mean, big pharma, why not? They can use it just as much as everyone else can use it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. They can figure out a way to make money off of it.
Well, and I do think too, I mean, you mentioned the research so often. I think that it's another, and I'm seeing comments in here about being able to talk to a veterinarian who may not agree with us, those sorts of things. I think it's such a great reminder for all of us, not just the research that you've shared with us, and to be reminded that this information is out there for us to dive into ourselves and to feel more empowered and informed. And then that also helps inform these conversations that can be pivotal, not just in changing the lives of our little ones, but in moving forward and having that ripple effect on the every animal that veterinarian treats moving forward.
Absolutely. That is really, I hope, will come from what you're talking about, is because, I think veterinarians want to do a good job. I mean, it's a profession that I've honored and I've, been involved in and wanted to be one at 3 years of age. So, I mean, I love my profession and I'm proud of my profession, but I also want them to have open minds and not be so fixated that this is the way I've been doing it for 25 years. And I'm not interested in knowing anything else. And I feel bad. And because it happens in human medicine too. This is the way we do it, and don't tell me anything else. And that's not medicine to me. So a doctor is an educator. That's the definition of a doctor. And to have the open mind to think, I don't know this, and I can admit I don't know this. Right. So why don't I learn something and try to change the way I'm treating humans now? I mean, if you're a physician, but the same thing for a veterinarian. If somebody else might have another way to do it, why am I condemning something before I've tried it? And that sadly is the way it happens. They totally discount it. They'll read one article on why homeopathy is bogus. They won't even look at it anymore. Or they'll read one article about acupuncture being bogus and they won't look at anything else. And, I always sort of say to myself, someday I wish they are in a position medically that they need help. And then they get the help through these other alternative modalities. And they realized, oh my gosh, why wasn't I there for my own clients and my own self and my family? Because all I've thought about is this drug or this surgical procedure. And I never thought about anything else that would allow the body to mend itself and to take care of itself. And
well, what I love too about, and all the work that you've done, and we've got questions coming in being like, what is ozone? So we'll have to have,
let's go ahead and schedule.
Our people call your people to try to schedule that.
What ozone is it's an O3 molecule. So when they use ozone therapy they're using ozonated saline, they're bubbling it with 97% pure oxygen and 3% O3. So it's a combination of a gas, and the O3, when it hits the cell, it goes into its mitochondria and activates the batteries of the cell. increasing nitric oxide, increasing ATP. So it's feeding, what's the most important thing that we cannot live without? It's oxygen. You can live without water for hours. How long can you live without oxygen? Like minutes, right? So when we can flood that body with oxygen, bring inflammation down, but when that O3 is in that state, it kills viruses, kills bacteria, kills fungi, kills yeast, so it kills it, and then it takes that O3 and it breaks into O2. So it basically kills it and then floods you with oxygen. So what ozone is when you have a lightning storm outside and there's lightning and you go out afterwards and you smell that fresh smell that's there. That's the earth producing ozone. And what it does, it produces it, falls down slowly. And as it does, it cleans the earth, gets rid of the mold and all the stuff that's overbearing the earth's oxygen levels. And it comes down and divides into more oxygen. So that's why you feel really refreshed when you go out after a lightning storm. There's more oxygen in the air. And
wow.
So people have this misconception of oxygen and ozone. They think ozone, it's part of the pollution and the smog. And the reason we use ozone to measure pollution is when there has been so much petroleum and nitrogen and sulfur and chemicals and all this things that are in the air, the only thing that's consistent is the ozone. So when there's more pollution, the ozone or the earth is trying to clean itself. It's like it's doing more work and it's doing more work and more that ozone's there trying to clean it out. So they measure the ozone and they say the ozone level is really high because there's so much smog. It's trying to clean so that the earth can come down and be clean again. So it's so warped in the way that people think about ozone, and you have these, have the knee-jerk reaction of a doctor saying, well, it's not approved by the FDA and it's a toxic gas. Well, I've done 70,000 treatments in animals, and many of them couldn't be helped by a lot of other doctors. And it has been amazing, controlling infection, controlling septic infection. So why wouldn't I try that first before I give up on an animal and just say there's
or
nothing?
Try something that's going to have perhaps adverse side effects. I think that's really what's exciting, is that there is a lot of research out there. We've already heard from so many people that from the last time that you were gracious enough to join us. Just, it's like little light bulbs going off for a lot of us, right? That we're just not thinking of these different ways that we could implement better health and a better life for our kitties.
And what I'm saying is that on the MASH Vet site, MASHVET, there's several videos. There's a TV show that I did on ozone about 4 years ago, and it really explains it a little bit more. And we've got a few videos on it. And then the new microbiome restorative therapy website, which is microbiomerestorativetherapy.com, but the easier one is to go to the mashvet.com.
Yeah, which is, it's actually pinned right here. So Lindsay pinned it in the comments, so you guys can click on that.
Right. They can click up, but we're trying to have that information, and there's a lot, to have information and to bring it to your vet. And I love when clients come in with all this stuff and they're like, because I'm learning something. But I know a lot of people like, I can't be bothered with all that stuff. I don't have time to read this stuff. Yeah. Well, I think people have to read to find out more stuff, right? And if they're really only getting educated by their drug rep who comes in and gives them information about the latest antibiotic that they can prescribe, they may not be getting all the information that they need to really help take care of their clients' animals. But I really think veterinarians want to do the best job that they can. And so, if you have a veterinarian that you have a good relationship with, then, give them this information, have them go on. I do consults with veterinarians and try to explain them as much as possible. But the microbiome one, we're trying to make it where it's self-teaching. They can learn everything themselves, from the latest research articles and understand it more. And I have a course that's on my website on ozone therapy that's for veterinarians and technicians that can take the course. There's no certification left because we didn't renew the certification on it, but it's 8 hours of CE on ozone therapy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's something that it's really for treating animals, but the backstory of it, is how to take care of your animals too, as well. And I probably should do another one for lay, but they have, O3 Vets, which is a company that caters to veterinarians, and they have a lot of videos too on why ozone therapy. And Peter is on here. He did a great presentation with O3 Vets last week on clients having ozone generators and how they can help support their animals at home with an ozone generator. And so having people know that it's not something that is really hard. I mean, you have to know how to give fluids, and you have to know how to like give rectal ozone, which is like putting a thermometer in. But you know, there's a learning curve. But I think for shelters, they should all have them. They should be having all shelters should be trained how to do ozone. That would save them so much money.
Oh,
Yeah.
and so many lives.
And so many lives.
I love it. Well, I encourage everybody to go. Lindsay, thank you for dropping that link here. I've spent a lot of time on that website, and I just think that it's amazing the resources that you put there and just the information that's there for us to really consume. And I think one of the biggest things for our conventional veterinarians to really, you know, kind of broaden their minds. Sometimes it takes one of us to come to them with, hey, here's the information that I'm looking at. What do we think? And really just start that conversation. I think sometimes it's easy to think that we, you know, have a conventional vet, they're not going to agree with this, they're not going to agree with that. Let's try to have that conversation. Yeah. At the very least, we're planting a seed, and we can go communicate with another veterinarian if we need to, but it's really doing something when, especially these resources that you have here, to help empower us to know what we're talking about and that more, and to ask our veterinarians about it. So
right.
Yeah. So
getting your veterinarians to be a part of a team, healthcare team for your pet.
Yeah.
So they're part of they're the doctor, they're the educator, they're the person who's, you want to give them as much information. And, and if they don't have time to look at it, and they don't have time and they're not interested, find another veterinarian.
Yeah, agreed. And it could be as easy.
Find somebody has their mind open, who's like, I want to, really? You think you could? Wow, I want to know that. I mean, I hope I never get old and stodgy that I can't keep thinking of new ideas. I mean, it would be boring.
Yeah, I think there's a piece of human nature, though, that, if someone brings you some information, and if you're honest, you say you don't know about it, sometimes it feels a little bit better to just be like, actually, no, that's not something that we do. Yeah. Instead of admitting that you don't know, since they feel they're supposed to know everything. I wouldn't say
human nature, that's ego, but yeah, it is a thing. Yeah. But it could be as easy. Ask the question before you just discount your vet. Ask the question. It can be as easy as saying, this is something I'm interested in. This is something I'm learning about. Is it something that you would be willing to do with my cat or dog?
Yeah. And if they don't have the equipment, it's not such expensive equipment for vets. Okay. So a veterinarian can get the ozone generator and all that for probably a good one for probably like, $3,500. So it's not like an X-ray machine. They can get the UV for about $5,000. So it's not like, a laser. I mean, there's tools that are not cost. I mean, there's, knowing how to take blood and give blood and do stuff like that. All vets know how to do that. So it's not like there's this learning curve of how to take a blood sample or move blood through the body. So, I mean, there's a very easy learning curve for the veterinarian. For the pet owner, it's I think more challenging than it is for the veterinarian, because they don't really know how to sometimes take the temperature on a dog, or a cat, so that may be more challenging. But for a veterinarian, it really is a very easy learning curve. And I'll tell you, when I have a conventional vet that takes the ozone course and then switches, they're like, they cannot believe that they have a tool that is like ozone.
Yeah.
So, any dental that you're doing on an animal, you should be flushing the mouth with ozone, not using antibiotics. Antibiotics are from the 1900s. Okay. We're in the 21st century. Okay. And when we use antibiotics on a cat mouth, that you are disrupting their microbiome for a year, and you may never get it back.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
have irritable bowel issues. Look back on their backstory and find out how much antibiotic they had prior to that. Because one course of clindamycin can wipe your microbiome out for a year, and you may never get it.
Yeah.
So the standard of care for a dental is to put them on antibiotics like clindamycin for a week. And that may be the never well since point in which the animal just starts to decline, and starts to have issues because they've taken away the microbiome and disrupted that 80% of the immune system.
That is so exactly where we're going to start next time. I think, we're talking about a number of different things that ozone is really a revolution for in so many ways. Someone just commented that her vet just got the ozone machine. Very exciting. But dentals, right? They're the bane of cat's existence in a way. I mean, dentals are such a big issue and they are something that cannot be ignored. And I feel like that's where we're going to start talking about ozone.
We talked about it, I think, on your last thing about the water bowl water, the biofilm water.
Yeah.
If there's like 1 trillion microbes in your mouth, and each party, I'm working on a video and I found this great slide of a European study that was done where they took a culture, a 16S on this side of the mouth, inside of the mouth, and looking at all the different kinds of species. And they're all different. This is different than this one, and this side. This is different than the tongue and the top of the mouth. It's like whole communities, different types. They're like all different relationships, right? So how much of that is disrupted when you put them on antibiotics?
Right.
How much of that is destroyed when you're feeding your cat glyphosated food? Because glyphosate is an antibiotic for the intestinal tract, which means it's an antibiotic for the intestinal tract. When the cat's chewing the food, it's going all up in here too.
Wow.
So we're really, and I don't remember as a veterinarian having as much dental disease as we have in cats now, with all the resorption issues that we see, that these poor cats that live in, and knock on wood, I have never had a cat have any tartar or plaque on their teeth. I think I have one, I remember one time with BJ, who was 20 when he passed. I could just do it with my fingernail, just take it off with my fingernail. And so, to have that kind of relationship of the biofilm of the water and the biofilm that's shared in the household as being part of the medicine, to me is, I think, really a cool concept of how to, pass that initial oral differential bacteria that is when they swallow, it starts to inoculate everybody downstream. And if they don't have that, how are they doing that?
Wow.
It's really incredible. We talk about holistic medicine, right?
But how it's ever evolving.
But when it's really, you really explained it in a way that just thinking about what lives in our mouths and then what it is, the way that everything works together, it really hit me too when you go through a dental and you said that could be their last, how did you say that? Never quite back to where they were. They were never quite well again. And we don't think that it had anything to do with the dental
or the antibiotic that they took.
But when you look at it holistically.
And when you look at it holistically, so when I do an intake, I do a timeline. So we take a timeline, and I love it when the client has done it for us, it's great. So they put in every single, like here, the kitten comes in and it has the FERCP, gets spayed, is given antibiotics during the spay. And then you follow the whole life of this animal. And then in homeopathy, you're supposed to look at and never well since and NWS. When was it that all of a sudden the cat was fine and then boom, the floor fell out? So you go back and you go, okay, what happened right before that? What happened right before that? Okay. So you can figure out what had shifted the immune system. Usually I will find something that's very significant that I can pinpoint as a point at which the slope of this thing went downward. So I'll look at, did the cat have some kind of an injury? Did the cat have a set of vaccinations? Was the family moving into a different location? And so those kind of questions, when you're working with a holistic vet and you can make this timeline and think about the cat and say, okay, and then sometimes there isn't any connection and you cannot find where this thing happened, right? But it's really cool if you can, and you can go back and address it. So if I know the animal went through a whole series of antibiotics because it had the abscess foot or an infected ear and was put on antibiotic and another antibiotic, and now 6 weeks later, or 2 months later, or 5 months later, it's had diarrhea. It was put on metronidazole. And then and then all of a sudden it's got irritable bowel. We got to get that cat a fecal transplant like ASAP.
Right.
We got to get that into them.
Yeah.
But I love it. This is also a way for us to find new solutions. Like just what integrative medicine has done just for the people that have even peripherally heard of you, as far as getting their wheels turning, as far as making new decisions, asking new questions, doing more research, and being able to make different, more informed decisions that really are life-changing.
Yeah. So thank you.
And the whole idea is that by learning this from your cat, you can learn for yourself and help your family stay healthier, have your environment be healthier. So not exposing your animal to the chemicals that are in your house and in your food. You don't want to do it for your cat, but you surely don't want to do it for your children or yourself. So by addressing that and looking at the whole family, which is what the cat is part of that family, or the dog is part of that family. They're an intricate part, and because they age 7 times faster, the negative we see is so glaring in our eyes. It really is it.
A lot easier to see instead of more gradual.
Yeah.
We cannot thank you enough for your time, for your experience, for all the resources. I encourage everybody to go. Lindsay, thank you for posting that again. mashvet.com. Just really plan to go down the rabbit hole and enjoy some good information. I very much look forward to, I'm very excited to have you back just for a total ozone chat. I think that is something that is going to be a game changer for a lot of us.
Of cats. Yeah. A lot of cat parents that are out there, and they're looking, we talk to them every day. They're looking for new answers. I just talked to somebody yesterday that, that he said his vet, he doesn't understand, but his vet just says there's no other answer. We're giving up. If you bring your cat back, we're going to euthanize them. And it's like,
right. But see, that's what I guess slaps me into like, what else can I think of? I don't want to like give up. I mean, it's like, and I'll tell you, if I didn't have my own animals go through these things, like my horse, he's what got me into ozone. Yeah. I was not giving up on this horse. And I was told by Tufts he would be dead in 3 days and I should just don't do anything more, put him to sleep. And I said, no, I don't want to, I know I can do more for him. And so he lived 2.5 more years jumping in horse shows when they said he'd be dead in 3 days with ozone. And changed his whole life.
I love that. I'm not a closet horse lover. I just love horses.
Yes.
And I think, for you he was 16, I think, when they were going to euthanize him.
Yeah. Well, at 16, they were going to, I got him because they couldn't care for him anymore. And then he lived 28.
So I just think it's remarkable.
Amazing.
And that's the biggest thing I think it drives all of us to, being a part of this community is what can we do to find the ways for our cats to live longer, healthier, happier lives. And this is the kind of stuff that is just game changing.
Yeah.
And
amazing.
we all know when we get to that minute where it's like, I'm not sure if it's time, what we would give for, 1 more day, 3 more months, quality of life.
Yeah.
It's part of life, but
6 more years.
This is a part of life that can really, really make their lives and ours just that much better.
Yeah. So
we're so grateful for you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're amazing. Oh, you're amazing. We're definitely, we'll get in touch with you so that we can set up another one just specifically for ozone. We love you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a happy Sunday.
Your cats hug.
Oh, we will. They're all like right here around us right now. So we will. 1, 2, 3. All right, Dr. Roman, we love you.
I was drinking wine though. If this back, here's like the bottle is.
It really does look like he's drinking wine.
Like, are you okay, Zora?
I'm drunk.
I think he's drunk. It's okay.
Look at him.
Right. It looks like his mouth is now. I see now.
Yeah, he's passed out.
The wine, okay.
Yep.
They're precious.
Dr. Roman,
Right,
thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy Sunday.
We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.